What's happening, people? Welcome back to another stream on the Gooner Souls channel. And yes, the title is correct. Reported by Fabrizio Romano this morning, Gabriel Jesus is a done deal. That is now true. Two transfers over the line. Of course, the announcement from Arsenal will be done within sort of 24 to 48 hours from a lot of different reporters. So we've got to wait and see when Arsenal announce this, but it is a done deal. And let's get right into all the transfer news. But before we do, like, share, and do subscribe, people. It massively, massively helps out the channel. Let's get right into it. So today we've just announced the deal of Gabriel Jesus for 45 million euros. Now, there's reports of saying that, we've offered him a 5-year contract, that there's a deal on the table for 5 years. Obviously, all of that will be coming out in the following weeks, and we'll find out more about sort of the personal terms and agreements with Gabriel directly. But as we know, the fee will be around the 45 million euro mark, and everything is done. Fabrizio Romano reported it this morning, so we can get excited about that. Now we've got Fabio Vieira and Gabriel Jesus over the line. Now this is a brilliant start to the window. We've gotten two major sort of key positions done before we've even touched a friendly yet, and that's what we want to see as Arsenal fans. We want to see the ambition, we want to see the drive from the club to show us what they're trying to do, what the plan is, because they didn't do anything in January. We trimmed the wage bill by nearly 700 to 800,000 per week, allowing players to go. Of course, we even offloaded Lacazette in the summer. His contract came to an end. That's another £200,000 per week that was saved, due to departures for free. Now, that's obviously why we've been so aggressive and been able to sort of be aggressive in this window. And that's really what's been the driving force behind it, is how much money we've been able to save, how much we've been able to shave off the wages, and allowing certain players and deadwood players who we have no use for anymore, in the likes of a Guendouzi, a Kolasinac, and Ozil, Aubameyangs, in the reign of Arteta, and allowing him to go and spend the money and build the squad he wants to build. Now, of course, at the moment, we've only got two signings to be excited about, but even if you look at the transfer links and a Raphinha coming in the likes of, Alessandro Martinez or Aaron Hickey, when we're looking at these profiles, they actually mean quite a lot in terms of how we look to move forward. We can clearly see that there's a European dominance needed, and that's where our force is going, and that's where our sort of priorities are lying in. Because when we came into this window, we knew that there were certain targets and certain positions we needed to tackle. We knew we needed a striker due to, Nketiah potentially going and Lacazette going. So obviously now we know we've tied up Nketiah to a contract for 100k a week, which for me, I think for a backup, he's got a lot to prove. He's hungry. He knows what it means. And you don't just become a U21, all-time goal scorer if you've not got something about you. Now, of course, when you get into the professional game, things can change, and things do change as well. We're not naive to think that, just because he's done it at youth level, that it'll translate to a professional level. But we've got to give him the opportunity. I feel when he did get given the opportunity to try and get us top four, he really did perform. So for me, it's about repaying that trust and saying to him, okay, you're going to be a backup to a Gabriel Jesus, or if we do potentially get another striker in. And for me, that's the key. It's about understanding what we want to do in this transfer window and how we're looking to build, because we can't just go and spend, let's say, 45 million on Jesus, then look at an Osherman, for example, for 80 million, and bring in a Fabio Vieira, and bring in a Euro Tillemans, and bring in, Alessandro Martinez, with a Raphinha coming in as well in one window. It's just not going to be viable. No matter how much spending power you have, there's always going to be that sort of limitation to how many players you bring in and how much quality those players possess as well. But if we look at a Gabriel Jesus, for example, he's the perfect player for Arsenal. Everything about him in terms of profile, in terms of how he plays and how he commits himself, that's exactly what we need. I've always said the profile that I'm looking at is a hybrid of a Lacazette and a Aubameyang, combining those two attributes and merging that player. And that's the player that Arteta really wants. Someone who's hardworking, link-up play, a goal scorer, a threat in the box, and I feel that is what Gabriel Jesus offers us. He can drop in deep, he can link up play, bring in other players into the game, but he's also that player who can be in the box in the right position for those cutbacks. And when we look at sort of what Arteta's style of play and his philosophy and his sort of implementation on the pitch, that's exactly what he wanted. When we see, what Jesus offers and what Jesus brings to the table is exactly what Arteta wants in any player that he brings in. Someone who's hardworking, committed, but also when you look at a Pep Guardiola system, we are a Man City light. We do play similar football, or the philosophy is definitely there in terms of how he wants to play. Overlapping wing backs, bringing the 2-8s into the box, compacting the box with many players in there for one of them to tap it in. Now, you don't always need those fancy goals. You don't always need those flicks and tricks. Sometimes just playing the simple way is exactly what you need. Now, even when you look at Adam Vogue, for example, he tweeted earlier today talking about Gabriel Jesus' return. And if you look at it from a minute perspective, per night, he's actually got a better goal return in the Premier League than Aubameyang. Now, we know how explosive and how good Aubameyang's been for us in terms of goals, how quickly he got them, and, being one of, I think it was the 5th fastest to 50 for Arsenal. Now, if you think about that and bring in Gabriel Jesus per 90, and if that's better performing than Aubameyang, then you've got someone who can score goals given the opportunities. What people don't understand or don't really realize is Jesus' performances come off the bench a lot. So when he's given that run of play, and which he was this season when they were trying to go for the title, I thought he was pivotal, because when he got brought in due to injuries or just a change of system in the Premier League, he was scoring and scoring and scoring. So we know when he's given a run of games, he can produce that. Lucas here with a comment saying, we want a fluid front three. I think Eddie, Jesus, Saka, ESR, Gabby, Vieira, Raphinha, and if that doesn't work, we will sign a striker next summer. Exactly. Because I feel like the addition of, even if we bring in, I know Vieira is a very sort of, we don't know. And that's just the truth of it, because he is, 20 years old. You're never going to be guaranteed what he can do. Of course, he's got the talent, he's got the ability and all the technical, ability to be able to do it at Arsenal and do it in the Premier League. He's a very Odegaard, Ozil type, Santi Cazorla type player, in terms of just his technical ability. I'm not saying he's as good as them, but it's just more about the way he plays and the style that he implements. Now, of course, that gives you good hope that he is going to work at Arsenal. I mean, especially for the fee and everything. Liverpool were trying to get him. Obviously, they've now decided that Darwin Núñez is basically their summer, and they're not really signing anyone else. So that's a very good pull, because he was one of those names in Europe that was silently followed by a lot of teams. So for us to be able to get him is huge. And then, like you said, another name there as well in Raphinha. Now, the reason why Raphinha excites me personally, it's not so much so that he's got this X factor, that he's this brilliant player. It's finally we can let Saka rest, and we don't feel like we're changing profiles. Because when we bring in a Pepe is a very sort of specific style. He's not really suited to the way that a Saka plays, for example. You can definitely see that they're stylistically different. He's a back to goal. That's how he wants to play. Saka's a bit more of a take-on play. Yeah, Pepe's got the skills and flair as well, but you can see the drop in pace, you can see the drop in sort of fluidity, and that's just the way Pepe is. It's nothing against him, it's just his style doesn't suit how Arsenal currently want to play. But when you look at a Raphinha, he's a direct profile to a Bukayo Saka. Now, of course, a lot of people are saying, put Bukayo onto the left, bring Raphinha onto the right, and you can have Jesus up front, or, Eddie up front, or even a Martinelli being touted to play up front. Now, there's many things you can do. You can have Raphinha fresh for a certain game. You can drop Saka, well, not even drop or rotate Saka for certain games. And that's the beauty of it, because when you look at these, and also one of the things that's getting so overlooked is the 5 sub rule. Now, the Premier League this following season are bringing in 5 substitutions. Now, that's huge, because if you the bigger, the better your squad is, the more chances are you can change that game in a positive way. Obviously, a lot of teams, especially Pep Guardiola, never really uses his 3 subs. Arteta, sometimes uses them very late, but maybe having 5 substitutions could, sort of tie his hand into thinking, okay, let me make an early change, because if it goes wrong, I can always change it again. So it could be a positive sign for us. And if we have players who don't drop quality, don't drop profiles, and don't drop in anything that we need to do, is brilliant. And the other thing with Raphinha is he is that player who can make something of nothing. Give him the ball and he will make something happen. He's just got that in him. You know, so for me, I'm very excited. I think this is one of the most exciting. Granted, I always put this disclaimer out there when I talk about the transfer. These signings and how deals have to go over the line, because obviously we can all get excited about them, but if they're not done, it doesn't really matter what we say. But Lucas here again, thank you for the support. Whose improvement is more important next season? ESR again. Do you know what it is, right? This is tough because when we look at ESR, I'm looking at him as a left wide player, sort of on the left hand side. That's where I feel like at the moment he suits it. But if Gabriel Martinelli is to be used as a striker, then his improvements are more important, in my opinion, because if you've got Jesus and Nketiah and then Martinelli is the other guy, I feel like he may be important, but for me, it's both of them need to improve in their own rights because we've got so many competitions, we've got so many games to play that we could see, Martinelli burning out, you could see Saka burning out. So we just need all our players to really improve, and I think they will because if you think about it, ESR and Saka, for the first time since I think Rooney and I can't remember I think it might be Rooney and Ronaldo to have, sort of 10 plus goal contributions for a teenage partnership. So it's important for ESR to keep improving the way he has, get those double goals and then assist contributions to add to that as well. For me, both of them. I don't know. It depends on who's played more or who's favored more. Obviously, the more a single player plays, that's who I want to improve more. But they're both important. I think with ESR, it might be one of those ones where the conversation could be: are we now going to play him in that Xhaka pseudo role, in those games where there's a low block? Like obviously, I know Burnley aren't in the Premier League anymore, but like a Burnley, for example, or some teams that really do play those low block teams where you need explosiveness, when you need those attack-minded players to break the lines, to drive the ball forward, and to make something different happen, it could be a possibility. So I'm not too sure because there's a system change, and that means players may be playing a different role within the system. So for me, I would really like to see, obviously, both of them improve. But I think Gabriel needs to improve more because as good as he's been, there were parts of the season where I was a little bit underwhelmed by how not poorly he's been, but the returns weren't there for me. When you look at sort of he went through a dry patch, he had a really good patch when he came into the team, when he got those starts. But there was questions asked, like for me, it was like, yeah, you're working hard, you're doing well, but there was parts of the game missing. I feel like with Martinelli, everything about him screams striker to me. So one thing I do want him to improve is just looking up and looking at his options. I feel he's too heads down, focused on where the ball is rather than looking at what's happening around him. And there's opportunities where he could have crossed it a lot earlier and he didn't. So it's going to be tricky because we can't read the mind of Arteta and what he's trying to do. We talk about attackers, but creative number 8 that can score will improve our attack to 100%, 100%. And this is the other thing that we don't really talk about because there are games in the Premier League, but it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult to sort of break those lower block teams down, and that's one of the things we're going to start to see whether we can do that and whether we have the ability to play 2-8s that are attack minded. So for me, it'd be very interesting to see. That is something I'm looking forward to seeing whether Arteta does it. Firstly, whether he does it. It looks like he will because he's going in for a Yuri Tillemans. He's going in for we've already got a Fabio Vieira, who are both sort of attack-minded but can also sort of track back as well. But they are sort of late into the box, scoring outside the box. And that's what I like to see because we're trying to bring an implementation of the old Arsenal with this new modern way of style of playing football where a lot of people get thrown forward and low blocks are only going to be beaten by numbers in the box. You have to try and match them man to man in the box if they're going to play low blocks. And that's, for me, the interesting thing to see whether all that creativity actually pays off. Because when you look at a Man City, for example, they sort of adjust things to make things work for them. So for me, that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of this sort of implementation. Even what Klopp does, he does it a little bit differently because he uses his wing backs more to fly forward and bomb forward and just be ready for the other side to just whip them back in. So for me, it's going to be interesting, and I think it definitely will improve our attack, especially when you've got the king of cutbacks in a Gabriel Jesus, someone who knows where to be in the box, someone who knows this is where I need to be if I'm going to receive the ball. Then when you add 2 8s in the box as well, it just gives centre back too many questions to answer. And that's one of the things I feel we miss sometimes is we don't pull the trigger. But if you've got that many people in the box, someone's going to pull it. And even if you look at, a rebound, there's going to be enough players there to even take a rebound opportunity off the keeper. So stylistically, I feel you're right. I feel that's going to be massive to our game. And also what this does, it kind of mitigates the double team, the triple team, or like even 2-man marking of a Saka, a Martinelli, or an ESR, because right now that's where they think the threat is. So they double team Saka, they double team a Martinelli, and they kind of do that because they know that if you sort of take Saka out or kick him out of the game, what's going to happen? Not a lot. We're not threatful without Saka being on his A game. We're not threatful without Martinelli being on his A game. So when that happens, we don't really have any answers at the minute. But then if you add those 2 8s that attack as well, that's going to really change things in the way we play. And it's going to make teams constantly think about what they need to do. Xhaka had chances to score when he played higher, but it's not his game to put someone else in that role. And exactly, this is what I think goes very, very under the radar is how many opportunities Xhaka had to score. But we know, it's one of those weird ones for me. It's it's very strange because his ball striking ability is actually really good, but he's not that player you want to be finishing at the end of a cutback, at the end of, a cross. He's just not that player. If you give him a long shot, yeah, it's probably flying in like it did against, was it Watford or that 4? I think we beat them 4-1. I can't remember who the team was, but it just went flying in. It was a brilliant goal. But in the box, yeah, it's a different question. I don't really see him being that player. So if you add like a Yuri Tillemans, because the thing with Fabio Vieira is I'm not too sure about him. I've not watched enough of him to sit here and say how good he is. But when I look at his sort of statistics, when I look at sort of the highlights that I've seen, you get a gauge of whether he can fit the system, but you just don't know how successful he'll be. I'm not one of those who bashes people for watching YouTube highlights, but also I'm one of those that encourages people watch the mistakes, watch those fail compilations, not because I'm trying to be hateful or untowards, but you want to see what people are seeing wrong with a player. But when you see Vieira and when you see even a Yuri Tillemans and when you see even Odegaard, like we've seen Odegaard, on cutbacks, put them into the bottom corner. He's very good at just slotting the ball, which is kind of what we need. We need those players who are positioned, who shoot with intent to score and just pull the trigger, really. That's ultimately the truth. We don't have enough players who want to pull the trigger at the first opportunity. Now we're adding those players in. Even if you look at a Raphinha, I feel his first time sort of finesse shots would be brilliant to this. So it's going to be exciting. I think a lot of the problems or a lot of these sort of issues that we're seeing stylistically and in terms of people saying we don't score enough goals, I feel this season that's not going to be an issue. But I just want to see if those number of players are committed forward, how we cope defensively. So that's the question I've got, whether Gabriel, White, Saliba, Tomiyasu, whoever it may be, because I don't know who will be playing, because our defense is packed now, and we've got really good players, and anyone can play. Saliba can play, Gabriel can play, White can play, and I wouldn't have an issue. Tomiyasu can play, then you've got the likes of, let's say, Alessandro Martinez comes in, you can put him left back, you can put Tierney left back, you can put Martinez in place for Gabriel, you can put Saliba in place for White, so there's a lot we can do defense, but I just want to see whether they can cope if they're left sort of not even stranded really, but if they're just left to kind of do a lot of the work themselves. So it's going to be quite interesting for me. And obviously he said Luke, which is a really good point. Fullbacks and midfields are overlooked when it comes to talking about goal. 100%. I feel like Klopp and Pep have brought the importance back, and they do the opposite. So obviously Liverpool, we know their fullbacks are vital to their goals. You know, everything comes to Robertson, Trent, and actually, funny enough, they actually get a lot of goals themselves directly as well. For fullbacks, we never think of that, but Trent gets a good number of goals. I think Robertson actually gets quite a few goals. Then when you look at the whole Pep system, you know, Gundogan, KDB, even Rodri pops up with a few goals. You know, Fernandinho pops up with a few goals. Obviously, you got Foden, who kind of plays midfield, kind of plays on the wing. But when you look at these, because they are traditionally midfielders who we're talking about, and they get sort of 5, 6, 7 goals. Obviously, we know KDB's assist numbers and stuff, but what happens is we overlook the fact that the game has changed from what it used to be. Now it's a bit more of a chess match. You need to kind of match man to man. You need to also be able to create space and create diversions in games. And that's what this does. When you're the reason why like an Atletico Madrid, a Burnley, and teams like that don't get enough goals is because they sit back and hope for that one opportunity and to be clinical. But when you have these attacking teams who just exude confidence, firstly, but also know how to navigate and create space for others, that's what we need to start doing, because it's even, as much as you want to prepare for that, you can't. Like, imagine having your centre backs, your full backs, and 2 midfielders coming back in and trying to defend against 6 to 7 players in the box alone. It's hard. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's very, very difficult for players to do that and defenders to do that, especially your lower teams and lower quality defenders. They're going to find it very difficult to do. So that's why I like it. That's why I'm liking the way that we're trying to be progressive. We're trying to play this attacking style of football. But that's my worry. My only worry is how do they handle it defensively? Because they have been good. Don't get me wrong. Like, defensive structure has been good. But my only worry is, have we overhyped our defense? Have we sort of made our defense better than it actually is? So, and I think that's the real test. And I think that's all down to mentality to them. Because if they can overcome that and say, look, we've got to ride this pressure and we've got to be able to just defend for our lives, because we're not going to have the support quick enough. And teams are now going to counter us. And this is what the risk of being a big team that's competing for titles, that's competing for Champions League, have to deal with. You have to commit numbers forward. You have to then rely on your defenders to do their job. And you have to rely on your keeper to not fumble the bag as well. So it's going to be interesting. I'm actually really excited because for me, I feel like defense can handle us going forward. But I could be wrong. I could definitely be wrong on that. But I think they've shown enough to say that if we play a 3-1-6, that it should be fine. Oh, sorry, guys. My throat is dry. But, guys, if you are watching, do subscribe and do drop a like. It massively, massively helps. And, obviously, you don't have to pay a single penny. I am on the road to 200, so anything will help. And obviously, get your questions down below. You know, we're talking about transfers. We're talking about Jesus. We're talking about how we feel Arsenal are going to do going forward and what's realistic, really. So get your thoughts in the comments as well. It'll be really interested to hear. And, yeah, so Lucas here. So my only worry is if we play both Martinez and Tomiyasu, is it too defensive? That's interesting because we know obviously how Martinez and Tomiyasu are. They are defensive, or it depends on really how we use Martinez, whether we're using him as a gap. But we know he's coming in as a left back because of Tierney, and obviously all this talk of Tavares going potentially to Napoli on a loan at the minute. Obviously, we don't really know how that's going, but it seems like Martinez is well on his way. So I don't know. I don't like it's. It is tricky because one of the things I worry about, and one of the things I said once, I always said that we could be like Man City but the only thing stopping us is Tomiyasu not finding that attacking gear. Because one of the examples I'll give you is when Man City go a goal down, well, what do? You know, they're like Cancelo, whether it's Walker, Zinchenko, who else do they play for? But they're the main three that play. What do? They instantly find another gear. They instantly find a way to provide a threat, you know, an outlet, someone who can then whip the balls in and just become more attack minded. You know, Walker is a very good defensive fullback, but one of the things he does really well is as soon as the team is down a goal or they need a goal to win a game, he just clicks into a different level, which I've not seen from Tomiyasu yet. We know he can do it. He's shown glimpses of it. For example, the Newcastle goal against for Martinelli, when Tomiyasu kind of chipped it over to him and then Martinelli kind of chipped it in. If people remember that goal, that's what we need to see more of Tomiyasu. So if we can see that and we can see that game, obviously he was injured, so I don't want to criticize him too much. But Martinez, of course, you know, at the minute we've only seen him play predominantly as a centre back. We know he can play left back as well, but obviously when you're a centre back first, it does beg the question: how defensive are you and how good are you with attacking? Obviously, time will tell, but it's quite interesting that we haven't gone for an attacking fullback. But I'm guessing they looked at Nuno Tavares, who predominantly his strengths are in the attack, and we didn't go for him. So for me, it's very interesting that we're looking at a similar profile. Maybe he just wants a solid defense and just allows the 2-8s to go do what they want, and he's changing a little bit of the defensive structure. But I think this is one of those where time will tell kind of ones, because I don't want to judge Martinez too early, and I've only seen a teeny bit from Tomiyasu to say maybe he has got that gear. But I hear it because at the minute we've only sort of praised their sort of defensive attributes. So 100%, I kind of agree with this, but I do want to hold off maybe saying that yet. But I don't disagree. I actually don't disagree at the minute. Yes, Pioneer, what you're saying. I hope you're all well. Yeah, 100%, man. I do agree as well. But now what I want to do is kind of talk about what's next for Arsenal. Like, we were seeing all of these transfer talks and transfer rumors, but ultimately, what does this all actually mean? Like, what does this land us? What does this sort of, you know, mean for the future of Arsenal? Now, we've seen it. You know, the rivals are rattled. You know, they don't know what to make of our window. Firstly, we're getting questioned where all this money is coming from. We're getting questioned on how come no one else is going in for these players and how are they beating us to these signings. And for me, I'm loving it. I can't lie. I am absolutely loving rivals being rattled by everything we're doing. Now, the thing is for me, like if people have followed me on Twitter or even on, you know, Jess's channel, I've spoken about this. I said to a lot of people, I want to wait and see what they do in this summer window before I criticize the January window, because I'm a fan of like not going for your second choice just because. And the reality is, if we're to take the predominant rumor, which would have been Alexander Isak coming in, now, are we really wanting to pay 75 or 80 million or whatever the rumored amount was for an Isak when he's not our first choice? I don't think that's good business. I think that's very reminiscent of the old Arsenal and the way we used to operate, and not what, you know, what we normally see. And what we're now seeing with Edu is, and Arteta, is a stringent plan. Look, this is what we want. This is what we're gonna get. If we can't get it, we'll wait. And I like that. I know a lot of people aren't a fan of that, and they go, "Nah, but you're protecting Edu." I'm not even Edu's biggest fan. I've criticized the hell out of him, but this summer, I don't think anyone can find a tweet where I've said, "You know what? I want Edu out." I'm actually liking what he's doing. I feel 45 million for Gabriel Jesus is a steal. It's a bargain. I don't care what anyone says. That is brilliant. And the fact that we're going so aggressive on Raphinha is brilliant to me. You know, because that's what we've asked for. That is exactly what we've needed for Arsenal, Edu, Arteta, Vinay, Josh, whoever it is. I don't care who deserves all the credit for this. I'm not saying one. I'm just praising them all. Like, for the fact that we're we've been linked to Raphinha, and within sort of 2 weeks, we could potentially sign him. That's madness. Because if you're looking at reports today, especially, we've set up a meeting this week with Leeds to discuss the transfer. Now, obviously, if you're looking at sort of English outlets and even Spanish outlets, they are being sort of hell bent, stubborn on 65 million. For me, I was always expecting a marquee signing, and for me, a Raphinha coming in as the marquee signing isn't a bad go. It's not really that bad. Like, if you look at even Raphinha's numbers, I just need to pop them up just so, like this season, 11 goals and 3 assists. Now that sounds underwhelming, when we look at sort of, a Premier League player coming in, but you've got to remember how flipping bad Leeds were. Leeds were so bad. And for me, like how ruthless we're being, like if you look at it, Barcelona are going in for him. Now we know South American footballers love, Barcelona, Real Madrid, that's where they dream of playing, especially with the legends that are played in both their clubs, R9 Ronaldo, Rivaldo, Ronaldinho, and the list just massively goes. And these are just recent players who have played there. Even Neymar, Neymar is one of those players that these younger Brazilians look up to. So for us to be able to even be in the conversation of signing him and the player being somewhat sort of interested in coming is massive. I just feel like they've now what it is, it's about them proving on the pitch that this project can happen. It's no longer the case of trying to convince people. It's about showing the project now, because I feel like we've got enough there to make those progressions. I feel if we had done anything less than what we did in terms of the season, we wouldn't have got these players. I feel another 6th, 7th, 8th finish would have absolutely destroyed any credibility this project had. Not from me, but for the players that we're looking to sign. And you know what the interesting thing is? Look at our window, and this is a window without Champions League football. Like, I was one of those, I was a little bit nervous what this window means if we don't get Champions League football. But to me, where would we have improved our signings if we had gotten Champions League? Because I still see us getting Gabriel Jesus. I don't really see anyone better right now than a Raphinha coming in. Fabio Vieira is what it is. Yuri Tillemans is as good as you get in terms of that number. Okay, maybe there's Hussam Aouar. But other than that, I can't really think of many that elevate you in terms of signing. So that's like one of the best signings we can make at the moment. And then when you look at Lisandro Martinez, like who else is there that you can really bring in? So for me, it's like I don't feel Champions League has impacted us in any negative way. And thank you very much, Lucas, man. I appreciate those kind words. We've got Karen here as well. Thank you very much. It's the first time I've seen you in the chat. I hope you like what you're seeing. I like it. Isaac is given a dry spell, so I'm glad. Exactly. This is what I mean. Like, I was one of those who was a bit annoyed because I wanted to see a name. I was like, just bring me a player. But the fact is, right, ultimately what I really like is they don't care what we have to say. And I know people hate this because they're like, fans should have a say how the club is run. Fans should have a say about their club, being able to protest, being able to have a right. I don't like that. I don't want the social media narrative to be what the club do. I want them to be like, we don't, like, for example, like the Aubameyang signing, let's just say, because that's one of the biggest on the last social media driven decisions the club has made. And do you know what? If signed the thing right, if they had turned around and gone, now we don't believe signing his contract is good for Arsenal's future, I rate that. When people like Basuma, for example, is one of the most highly touted by the Arsenal fan base to come to Arsenal. And they were like, well, that's not what we want. We want a Yuri Tillemans. We want a Fabio Vieira. We want a whatever else, a Hussam Aouar or whatever. We don't want a defensive midfield or defensive-minded midfielder. We want an attacking 8. And they literally just told us, like, well, you can ask for him, but what we want is what we'll get. And I quite like that because it shows a plan. It shows the fact that they're not going to be sort of bullied by social media into making signings. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying that people are tagging Arsenal saying you better sign this player. it's more of the case of the hype that gets built around a player, and then when you sign him, it's to please the fans. I don't feel like they're doing signings to please us anymore, and they're doing them genuinely for the sole reason they improve everything we want to do as a football club moving forward in terms of the future of Arsenal Football Club. And that's what I know people hate, because people are like the project, the process, the this, the that, they're all PR buzzwords. But when's the last time we can sit there and go, and hands on heart say a signing is done for the betterment of Arsenal and not for the fans? Because I even feel like Ozil and Sanchez, as good as they are, were done for the fans. I'll be honest with you, I feel they were fan-driven signings, because there was a bit of a murmur, there was a bit of protesting going on. There's few people who wanted the Wenger out movement kind of were in the whispers. So they obviously wanted to kind of close that down, bought in Ozil on the transfer deadline day, and it felt like the change of Arsenal. But I felt that was more because we didn't do anything after that. Then we bought in Alexis Sanchez, and we're like, okay, maybe they're onto something here. But then that's it. And that's what I mean by when I say that they're media driven, that social media driven, and it's fan pleasing signings. I like the fact that, look, this is what we want to do. Yes, there may be better names out there. Yes, there might be a player who can sell more shirts, but we don't care about that. What we want to do is bring in success. And if you look at Josh as well, and when he speaks, yes, it can all be PR. It can all be here to sort of turn the fans happiness, all of that sort of stuff. But to me, I don't mind that, because if you're talking about winning, that's what I want to hear. I just want to hear how you're going to get there and how you're going to win. And that's all I want to see. Yeah, you know what? Like, we're the minority, but it's becoming the majority opinion across the board. And I'm liking it. I'm liking the fact people are sitting there and going, look, we can have an opinion on who Arsenal should sign. But if they don't sign him, it's not the end of the world, because as long as they sign players who they deem fit, for the club. Lucas is in best case scenario, probably be Nkunku, Hernandez, the Milan left back, Tonali, but it's not realistic now. All right, yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, in terms of if we had gotten Champions League football, yeah, Theo Hernandez looks a baller. I really do like his profile. I feel he's got that sort of hybrid in him that can defend, but he's phenomenal going forward. And you know what it is? Nkunku's an interesting one. I've had a few conversations with a few people about this one, and the problem is his release clause next season. It's at 60 million euros. I don't think he's going to be obtainable by Arsenal unless we do a madness, right, and win the league or something. Like, we have to do something crazy for Nkunku's head to go not to Man City and not to Liverpool. I don't think Liverpool will go in for him, but I can see Real Madrid going in for him. I can see potentially Barcelona, depending on their financial situation, going in for him. We could see, potentially Man City, if the João Felix deal doesn't get done, going in for him. I think if they get João Felix, he could be on his way to another club. Chelsea could be in for him. I'm not worried about Spurs so much, because I feel like we can compete against them. We've got a bigger legacy than them, so that could play a part, and especially a French legacy as well. So that it'll be interesting. But yeah, Theo Hernandez, you know what? For me, it's a bit of a weird one that no like sort of European clubs are looking at him. And I know Milan obviously won the Serie A this season, but it's interesting to see that not many players. Tonali is an interesting one, but he's very young. So I can see why we haven't gone in for him. If I'm thinking of the right Tonali, that is. But yeah, I don't think they could have done much better than what they're kind of showing us now. There's not really, like, there's one or two plays where you could be like, okay, yeah, you could go for this player instead of this player. But a lot of it's kind of like a different type of profile, but obviously I think Nkunku or Jesus is very subjective to how you think, because Nkunku's output right now is crazy. Like, it's really good, but you also need to understand, like, that Bundesliga to Premier League, it works and it doesn't work. So it's quite an interest, but we know Gabriel Jesus is a bona fide, guaranteed success in the Premier League. He's won it. He's scored a few important goals, so we know he's got that in him. And also, he's got a winner's mentality. He said that he wanted to move to guarantee himself a Brazilian spot for the World Cup. So we know he's got ambition to why he wants to perform, and he's not just coming away from City just because he wants a payday. I truly don't believe that's why he's coming. I truly believe he's coming because he wants to prove to the Brazilian national team that he deserves a spot in that team. I know he's a Brazilian international. I'm not saying he isn't, but you still have to prove yourself, and I feel this is the best place for him to come. We can convince him like Jesus by giving him game time and option of being a big star. Still unlikely though. Yeah, and this is the thing. One of the conversations I've been having with a lot of people is projects today mean a lot more to players than individual competitions. So what I mean by that is we thought not getting Champions League football, I'm not saying it's the end of Arsenal Football Club, but it could have been sort of a negative thing for us. But it seems to be that it hasn't impacted us because the project is that strong and the process, or whatever word you want to use and associate to it, clearly whatever Arteta, Edu, Vinay are saying to these players is clearly clicking in their heads and going, you know what? Yeah, I see that. And I agree with what you're saying. And that's why I want to come. And I feel like that's what's happening more and more. Like even when Klopp went to Liverpool, Pep went to Man City, given that these guys have a track record, it's obviously going to be a little bit easier for them. But they still have to promise a project. And that's why I feel like with Conte at Tottenham, the reason why I'm not a fan of those types of managers is because no player guaranteedly knows whether that manager is still going to be there in 1 season or 2 seasons time. But with like a Pep and a Klopp, and even Arteta in this moment of time, just been given a new contract. You know what? That contract extension is vital because it shows that, okay, this is what we're committing to the future. And that, you're coming in to a manager who's still going to have a job at the end of the season. Granted, nothing drastically bad happens and that he doesn't just, fall to like 10th place or something. As long as none of that happens, he's got a job. That he's still going to be in contract for a few seasons now. So players know there's going to be stability. When you look at even the young players talk, like, Martin Odegaard, saying that I feel like I'm at home at Arsenal, I feel like I want to be giving a commitment to this club. When you look at Bukayo Saka talking, when you even look at Tierney talking, then you look at Gabriel, when you look at Thomas Partey, when you look at the way that even Lacazette talks about Arsenal, when you look at these types of players, when they talk about Arsenal, you really do see, the commitment from these players. And there's a unity, there's a vibe, there's a good feel factor at Arsenal. And players look at that and they go, you know what? It just seems like a good place to be. Development-wise, you're looking at Martinelli's development, look at Saka's development, look at ESR's development. And when you see all of these things, right, you, as a player, you want to be there. Look at, okay, let's talk about personal things, right? Look at the corporate world. Look at the vibe that Google create for their employees. Look at Microsoft's, like, where they have slides, aquariums, chill out zones, etc. Why do people dream of being in these businesses and these corporations? Because it seems like a good place to be. Now that could be a false narrative, that could be a false perception, but when you see these players and these employees coming out and saying, no, it actually is fun, like we enjoy working and we enjoy coming into training, we enjoy playing for the manager, these things inspire other players and go, you know what, if I'm, in the peak of my career, where do I want to be right now? Probably at the likes of an Arsenal, at the likes of a City, at the likes of a Liverpool, at the likes of, these exciting up-and-coming projects. You don't necessarily, right now, Man United have a difficult task of convincing players because there's nothing positive there. There's not a good vibe. The fans aren't happy. There's nothing good there. So it's very hard for a player to step out of maybe their comfort zone and jumping into those clubs. So for me, I feel like projects and sort of vibes and how the sort of fans are, when you look at the there's a fan group, the supporters group that recently kind of came about on Twitter. it's interesting because when they came about as well, it's created an atmosphere at the club. So I feel like, you know what, you can. And sometimes, you know what, surprisingly, you could go get an Nkunku, come into an Arsenal over maybe a different big club because of what we have to offer. Watch out for the French market if we extend Saliba. I think Saliba extending sends a massive message, not only to the French market, but to our fan base. It shows that there's a level of commitment that these players and that this hate narrative that, oh, Arteta hates certain players, it's just bogus. I've always said it is bogus, but it kind of confirms that, because if a player like Saliba, who a lot of the fan base feels is not in the plans and all of this, extends his contract, why would he extend if he's not liked? So it sends massive waves around, and especially an up and coming French player who's deemed to be the next Raphael Varane, etc. It'll be huge. He was captain in the youth French team. If he is a star centre back at Arsenal, it's another market we can dump 100%, 100%. And this is the thing, there's so many like sort of up and coming French players, and that market is always brilliant to look at, especially for midfielders. Look at Chouameni, look at Camavinga. They are two of the most up and coming midfielders in terms of under sort of 21, under 22. So it's an exciting time, to try and get into the Brazilian market, to try and get into that French market. And players talk ultimately. And, if Saliba's saying to a player, let's say an Nkunku, for example, saying, bro, like, you want to be at Arsenal, like, trust me, development-wise, opportunities you can get, the fans are wicked, all of this, right? If he goes and says this on Nkunku, it could change his mind to being like, you know what, that sounds good, that sounds like where I want to be. So, no, you raise a brilliant point, when you get these players to commit, especially young, up-and-coming, exciting players who are very well respected as well amongst their peers. It's vital, it's very important to get these locked down, especially, if because Arsenal do believe he'll become a star centre-back, he'll become one of the biggest centre-backs in world football. So if you've got that, you need to lock him down. You can't be letting players like that go on a cheap or on a free because you haven't tied them down. So no, you've raised a brilliant point in terms of that. But yeah, no, that's pretty much like what I had planned for the stream today. It was kind of a last minute planning, but I've really appreciated the support. There's been a lot more people watching, and obviously, if you haven't already, please do subscribe, do like, and if you have Twitter, do follow me on Twitter on Gunnar Souls. I do try and respond as much as I can. At the minute, I'm off work, so it's a bit of vibes on there. So yeah, just follow me on Twitter if you want those daily chats. And I'm gonna try and obviously upload as much as I possibly can. It is a bit difficult because time and stuff like that, but I feel the schedule will be around 10 o'clock, 10:30. Pretty much, I'm trying to do it daily. So that's what my aim is this week, to try and at least upload once a day at 10 o'clock in the evening, just because it feels like the best time where I've rarely got anything planned. But do like, do share, and do subscribe, people. Until next time, have yourself a blessed Sunday and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you very much, people. Take care.